Discovered my best friend planning to steal my invention, and now I'm contemplating whether to expose them to protect my work. My parents got married when they were incredibly young. My dad knocked up my mom, and their parents forced them into marriage. My grandfather managed to arrange a business opportunity for my dad in a big city, so right after I was born, they packed everything up and moved. My mom had spent her whole life up until then in a conservative southern town. She was raised to be this utterly submissive wife, the type who would never question her husband or step out of line. Even after we settled into the city, she barely ventured out. She had absolutely no friends, just stayed at home completely isolated from anything that didn't revolve around me or my dad. My dad was, in every sense, just a provider. He was always gone on business, never present as a partner for my mom or as a father to me. Sure, there was plenty of money, so we never wanted for anything materially. But emotionally? That was a different story. Growing up, I became my mom's entire support system, her very best friend. We would talk about everything imaginable. For years, I nudged her to break out of her shell, to make friends, to find hobbies, to just do something for herself. After so much encouragement, she finally started visiting a nearby park and met her first friend, a gym trainer. With this new friend and my own pushing, she decided to join the gym. Little by little, she met more people there, and for the first time in her life, she started to taste something like a real social life. But even then, she still confided everything in me. Things took a sharp turn almost a year ago when my dad, probably inspired by his new secretary, asked my mom for an open marriage. He told her he was unhappy, that she wasn't giving him everything he needed. My mom, who clings so deeply to her faith and her idea of being a Christian wife, was completely blindsided and told me about it in tears. I was the one who suggested divorce. She deserved better, but she absolutely refused. She said she didn't believe in divorce and wouldn't be the one to end things. But as my dad kept pressing, I could see exactly where this was going as she finally gave in. Together with her friend, I convinced her to at least try his idea, but only if there was total transparency between them. My mom, who by now was a fit, athletic woman at 39 thanks to her gym habit, hesitantly agreed. She and my dad set their conditions. Meanwhile, my dad was 41, with a developing belly, clearly oblivious to the power dynamic shifting under his feet. Sometimes, I still can't understand how he didn't see any of this coming. I helped her set up dating profiles online. It was almost 6 months ago now. I saw the tidal wave of attention she got, so many matches, so many conversations, it was almost overwhelming for her. It only took a little while before she was meeting up with some of these men. Suddenly, all this attention boosted her confidence and she seemed like a new person. While she was out living this new life, my dad immediately hooked up with his secretary, but beyond that, he had almost no luck. Part of their deal was being totally honest, so my mom told him about every hookup. I almost felt bad for him almost. A few weeks ago, some trivial thing made him snap and scream at my mom. In the past, she would have rushed to apologize, maybe even broken down, but now, with her renewed confidence, she stood her ground. The fight started happening constantly. He'd make snide remarks about her clothes or her new look, practically choking on the word whore, but stopping just short of saying it. I think the reality of what open marriage really means finally hit him. Recently, my mom told me he tried to bring up ending the open marriage arrangement, but she flat out refused. Now, all signs point to them splitting up. He was never there for either of us, but it still feels strange to think of my parents actually separating. I can't feel bad for him, but I do wish he had at least tried to be a better husband and father. But at the end of the day, I'm just so happy for my mom. She's finally, truly living. Just a few days after, some of my mom's old church friends showed up. Once upon a time, my mom went to church with them, though they'd always looked down on her for being from a small town. They were patronizing and judgmental, while my mom always believed in acceptance and kindness. She clashed with them over their bigotry, and eventually, they started icing her out of everything and she stopped going entirely when she found a new group of friends from the gym. These so-called church friends didn't come for support or reconciliation. Instead, they called my mom a slut right to her face. She threw them out without hesitation. She's on a fitness cut these days, and her muscles are defined. Her abs and arms look incredible. But amid all the insults being hurled at her, the grandparents went for another cheap shot, accusing her of having a man body, and even started tossing around transphobic remarks. It was disgusting. Through all of this, at least my mom had the solid support of her trainer friend, who'd been through a divorce herself. That friend called the attorney she'd use, and my mom has spent a lot of time at her house since this started. Then came the real twist. Turns out the entire business my dad is running actually belongs to my mom. I had no idea, always assuming dad was the owner, but apparently, my grandfather mom's dad set it up in her name ages ago. So, she's the rightful owner. Right now, it feels like the whole world has gone haywire. Dad is holed up in some hotel, and the grandparents finally left yesterday after days of endless fighting and desperate attempts to force my parents back together. I know this divorce drama is only just beginning, but I'm hoping desperately that things will calm down soon. Update 2. So much has unfolded since my last update that I hardly know where to begin. I want to take a moment to say how grateful I am for the support I've received. Being able to write all this out has honestly helped me come to terms with everything unraveling in my life. My mom's attorney, a sharp, competent woman recommended by my mom's gym friend, Lisa, has been incredible so far. She patiently walked my mom through every step she can expect in the coming divorce proceedings and gave her a lot of reassurance when things started to spiral. Then she started combing through my dad's company records to prepare for the legal battle, and that's when everything truly came crashing down. I'm not sure why it shocked me, given my dad's recent behavior, but we discovered he has been having numerous affairs for years. He was incredibly careless. There were stacks of receipts showing he used the company account for flights and lavish resorts, all at holiday destinations, and always with different women. These trips dated back at least 10 years. My mom never suspected he was always absent from our lives, and she'd simply gotten used to it. Now I see he barely bothered to hide it at all. It stunned me even further to realize he used his company emails to talk openly to his secretary about their affair. After some digging, we figured out they had been secretly together 4 months before my dad dropped the bombshell and asked my mom for an open relationship. Tracing their correspondence, we pieced together their plan. His secretary, tired of being just the mistress, began pushing my dad to finally divorce my mom. But they wanted to manipulate the situation so my mom would be the one to file. That way, he could snatch up a huge share of the company. It was the secretary who hatched the plan to suggest the open relationship. The two of them just assumed my mom would be horrified and rushed to file for divorce. They couldn't have predicted what actually happened. My mom agreed to the open arrangement, and things took a turn they never expected. But once my mom started seeing other people, my dad quickly grew jealous, and that's when the chaos escalated. He soon initiated the divorce. Afterward, he tried to erase all traces of their conversations. He deleted his emails and told the secretary to do the same. He must have thought he was being so thorough, never guessing that every email was still safely backed up on the company server. I haven't seen my dad in over a month now. All communication is strictly through his attorney at this point. He's still demanding half the company, though my mom's lawyer isn't worried, especially now that we have hard evidence of his misconduct. She said it's unlikely he'll walk away with much. Meanwhile, Lisa has continued to be an incredible support for my mom. She's walked this road before. Her own husband cheated and she made it out stronger, so she's kept my mom grounded through all the madness. I honestly don't know what we'd do without her. Update 3. Clearing out some saved passwords on my laptop today, I stumbled back onto this old account and reread my posts from 2022. It honestly felt like diving back into someone else's life, a strange, wild trip down memory lane. It's been 4 years since then, and with all the chaos long behind us, I decided it was finally time to share an update on how everything turned out. The divorce turned into a drawn-out battle because my dad refused to give up on the idea of getting half of the business. He tried everything, fighting tooth and nail, but we already discovered that my grandpa had set up the company entirely in my mom's name years before. Once my dad's lawyers realized that fighting this in court would mean exposing just how much of the company's money he'd wasted on 10 years of affairs and all sorts of other shady things, they knew they were cornered. The threat of bringing everything out in front of a judge, including the possible criminal implications, finally made my dad fold. My mom ended up having to give him a sizable make-him-go-away payout, but once he signed, he was gone for good, booted from the company completely. My mom got to keep absolutely everything. She didn't want to drown in the stress of running the company on a daily basis, so instead, she made herself chairman. She found a real CEO and management team to handle all the heavy lifting, leaving her to oversee only the big picture stuff and collect the profits. For the first time in ages, she actually had free time and she used it. She went into business with her trainer friend, Lisa, and together they opened a boutique gym a couple of years ago. Lisa takes care of the fitness side, and my mom, ever the strategist, runs the business end. At 43 now, she's still absolutely shredded. She trains hard, lives even harder, and is so much happier than I ever remember her being. She's also seeing someone new, just dating casually. He's divorced too, and they've been together for a few months now. They travel, they go on little adventures, and best of all, there's zero pressure. Watching my mom transform from the quiet, submissive woman she used to be into this vibrant, confident person who actually enjoys her life has been amazing. As for my dad, Yeah, he married the secretary. Life doesn't have the gloss or glam it used to when he could bankroll luxury vacations out of my mom's company. They live a pretty downsized, average life these days. As for me, I'm 26 now and very low contact with him. Maybe we do lunch twice a year, and it's always painfully stiff and awkward. He still tries those bitter, passive-aggressive digs about my mom, but I just ignore him or change the subject. Looking back, my dad's grand plan to ask for an open marriage so he could chase after his secretary and steal my mom's company was the best thing that ever happened to us. It blew up spectacularly in his face, and it gave my mom the freedom and courage to realize just how little she ever needed him. Update 4. Right after I posted the last update, life decided it wasn't done being bizarre. A few weeks later, I got an email from a DNA site I'd completely forgotten I'd signed up for years ago, one of those "you've got a close relative" alerts that you assume is a glitch. It wasn't a cousin. It was close family half-sibling. I clicked the profile expecting a catfish and ended up staring at a 15-year-old girl with my dad's exact eyes and the same weird calico battle my whole life. Her name is Sophie. Her mom messaged me the same day, polite and shaky, asking if we could talk. We met at a coffee shop near the river. Her mom brought a folder with photographs and old emails, and as soon as I saw a picture of my dad holding a toddler with that exact calico, it felt like someone reached into my chest and pulled something out. He'd been with her mom on and off 4 years back when I was a kid. When she got pregnant, he promised her a lot of things he never followed through on. She raised Sophie on her own. She didn't want our money, she wanted medical history and, if Sophie wanted it, answers. I told my mom before I told anyone else. She didn't flinch. She asked where they were and if they were safe and invited them for dinner like she was inviting an old neighbor who'd moved back to town. That first night felt so strange and so simple at the same time. Sophie sat at our table, quiet and watchful, and my mom made her favorite lemon pasta like she'd known her for years. They both laughed at my terrible attempt at opening a bottle of sparkling water without spraying the entire counter. By the end of the meal, Sophie was asking my mom questions about weightlifting and if the gym had teen classes. My mom offered to show her around. She didn't say "I'm sorry" to them 100 times or make it about her. She just set a plate in front of a girl my dad should have known and made sure she didn't leave hungry. My dad found out the way he always finds out, by trying to control something he never really had a handle on. He called me, barely keeping it together, and hissed that these people were trying to extort him. He said he'd call the police if they contacted him. I told him there was no extortion. I told him I took a paternity test with Sophie anyway to make it official. 99.something%. He hung up. 10 minutes later, the secretary's wife was in my texts calling me a traitor. I didn't respond. An hour after that, she sent a second text, shorter and weirder. I didn't know about her. I believed that part. You don't hide a teenager for 15 years without building a very complex house of cards. Meanwhile, the discovery that he'd been sending money here and there over the years in weird, sporadic amounts came back around in a way he didn't expect. When my mom's CFO started auditing old expense lines to prep an acquisition the company's making, he flagged a handful of odd vendor payments that made no sense. My mom handed everything to her lawyer and the accountant without blinking. They amended what needed amending and filed what needed filing, above board, by the book. Paper trails have a way of lighting themselves up when you stop trying to smother them. A letter showed up addressed to my dad the next week about an inquiry into misuse of corporate funds. He called me then too, voice smaller than I've ever heard it, asking if my mom would play ball on a statement to soften things. She didn't. She told him, through his attorney, that the only thing she'd be doing was making sure her company was clean. Then she put on her shoes and went to teach a business basics workshop at the gym for a handful of teenage girls who'd asked her how to start something of their own. Sophie came to the gym the next day. Lisa'd introduced her to the beginner class and didn't treat her like anything other than a kid who wanted to learn how to squat without wrecking her knees. My mom stood back with that look she gets now, all calm power and sharp edges softened, and just watched. When Sophie hit her first clean set with that proud, startled face, my mom clapped so loud I swear the entire room turned. After class, we sat on the curb and ate protein bars and talked about school and music and the fact that she hates tomatoes but loves salsa, which, frankly, makes no sense at all. My grandparents found out the way explosive family news always finds them too early in the morning through someone who shouldn't have been the one to tell them. My paternal grandmother called me sobbing, and then, before I could say much, she said something I never thought I'd hear: "We should have never forced that marriage." It hung there, this sentence loud enough to drown out decades. It didn't fix anything, but it was like somebody cracked a window in a room that had been stale for years. She asked if she could meet Sophie. I told her that would be up to Sophie and her mom. My dad's marriage is, by all accounts, exactly as brittle as you'd imagine. He never showed up for the paternity appointment. He sent a statement through his lawyer, offering a settlement with a gag clause and nothing resembling an apology. Sophie rolled her eyes when I told her and said she didn't want his money, she wanted him to stop pretending she didn't exist. Her mom said they'd let Sophie decide what relationship she wanted, if any. It's not my place to fix whatever he broke with them. I can only be a person who shows up when I say I will. So we went to a Saturday market and bought ridiculous candles shaped like croissants and a plant I will absolutely kill in under a month, and we walked by the river and she told me about the first time she realized she was good at physics. She is frighteningly smart. Somewhere in the middle of all this, my mom's casual guy quietly stopped being casual. He didn't try to step into anything he doesn't belong to. He mowed my mom's lawn when her mower broke and brought ice cream when Sophie got her braces tightened and stayed late washing plates after dinner. I watched my mom look at him the way you look at someone who makes your life larger instead of louder. When he asked if she wanted to take a trip down the coast with him and spend a few nights somewhere with no Wi-Fi, she actually said yes. She told me she's not in a hurry to get married again, that she likes the way it is, and then she laughed and said she also likes the idea of disappearing in a beach town for a long weekend with a man who knows how to put away a dishwasher the right way. The business kept moving under everything. My mom closed on that acquisition she's been chasing. Ironically, it's a small marketing firm that used to handle my dad's accounts back when I was a kid. The owner recognized her last name during due diligence and asked if that was the same last name who always sent edits at 3 a.m. She smiled, said it was complicated, and signed the papers anyway. She also offered Sophie a part-time desk job at the gym over the summer if she wanted it. Not as charity. As accountability. You'll learn to check people in, handle a calendar, and not flinch when somebody tries to argue about a late fee, she said. That's a better education than half the classes I took in college. Last week, my dad spotted me at the grocery store and followed me into the parking lot like a ghost who hadn't decided whether to ask for forgiveness or directions. He looked older in a way that had nothing to do with gray hair. He started to say my mom's name like it was a complaint. I told him I wasn't interested in hearing another lazy insult about the woman who built the life he tried to burn down. I told him I met my sister at a coffee shop by the river and that she's good at physics and hates tomatoes and that none of the good things happening right now include him. He stared at me like I'd grown new teeth. Then he said, "So, that's it." And I said, "That's it." What I didn't expect was how natural it would feel to fold someone new into our mess and have it get quieter, not louder. The night before Sophie's second class at the gym, she texted me a photo of her dog wearing one of our gym's hoodies, paws jutting out the sleeves like he was about to bench his body weight. My mom laughed so hard she had to sit down. It's a stupid detail, but it felt like a hinge turning. For all the years my dad tried to control the narrative or rewrite it entirely, the story kept unraveling toward a better ending the second we stopped protecting his version of it. He opened a door 4 years ago and thought he was the only one who'd get to walk through. Turns out, we got to decide who we let in after he left. And somehow, with all the noise stripped away, what's left actually feels like a family. Update 5. I thought the dust had finally decided to settle, and then this week walked in like it had a key. It started with an email from our new marketing firm, the one my mom just bought, flagging something odd in a pitch request. A mid-tier client we've had 4 years forwarded a slick deck they'd been sent by a small consultancy with experience in our vertical. It was our deck. Not a copycat. Not inspired by ours. Same typos in the footer, same photo of Lisa laughing under a pull-up bar, same joke about how if a gym can keep 40 people's calendars aligned, your CRM won't scare us. The logo was different. The bones were ours. My mom didn't raise her voice. She walked into the conference room with legal in it and handed the folder to the attorney like this was a handoff at a relay. Metadata is a funny little snitch. It pulls up the chair and clears its throat at exactly the wrong time for the person who thought they were smarter than it. The file history screamed my dad's laptop ID. He and his wife had started a consultancy out of a co-working space across town. They'd been emailing warm intros to a handful of clients my mom's company had serviced for years, attaching assets he didn't own, and offering a preferred rate if we move quickly. The TRO hearing was a Tuesday morning with bad lighting and a judge who did not suffer fools. Our attorney put the two decks on a screen side by side and zoomed into the same tiny alignment error on slide 12 like a surgeon points to the tumor. The judge didn't bother to hide her exhale. She said brazen the way you say you tracked mud over a white rug and granted the order. She authorized a forensic image of his machines and barred their consultancy from contacting any current or former clients of my mom's business. A bailiff handed him the papers. He looked down, then over, like maybe he'd spot an exit that wasn't a door. The secretary's wife emailed me that night. No insults this time. Just, I can't do this anymore. I'll cooperate with whatever you need. She sent a string of messages between her and my dad about repurposing assets and keeping it hush because she'll come for us legally. It felt less like betrayal and more like someone who finally stopped pretending the floor was a ceiling. Our attorney added the emails to the motion for sanctions like you plug in a missing puzzle piece and the picture finally clicks. On Thursday, my mom signed an affidavit with hands that didn't shake. When she got home, she stuck a post-it on the fridge that just said, groceries, lemons, and started zesting like it was a normal day. On Friday, a lien notice showed up addressed to my dad for the tax penalties tied to the amended filings from the old expense accounts. He called, left a voicemail of heavy breath and half a sentence, and I did the least dramatic thing I have learned I can do, nothing. In the middle of all of that, Sophie had her school STEM night. She texted me a photo of a poster board with sloppy glue edges and equations that looked like a foreign language to half the room and like poetry to her. We showed up with a bag of gummy bears and a portable fan because the gymnasium was a swamp. Her physics teacher pulled us aside and said, without pomp, she's the kid you build a lab around. Sophie rolled her eyes and tried not to smile. My mom cried at a demonstration about capacitance and blamed it on the fans. Halfway through the night, my dad arrived. I saw him before Sophie did, standing near the edge of the crowd with a plastic cup of lemonade in the particular, brittle posture he wears when he expects to be told yes. He moved toward us like a person wading into a pool he knows is cold. He said her name like it was a question. Sophie slid her hands into her hoodie pocket, took one step back, and said, very clearly, please don't show up where I am without asking. You could feel the sound of it. The teacher hovering nearby cleared his throat. A volunteer with a lanyard stepped into our orbit like gravity. My dad nodded in that way you do when you don't have any cards left and said he was proud of her. She said, you don't know me, and then she turned and asked the kid at the next booth about his potato battery. It wasn't a scene. It was a line drawn with a washable marker that will stain if you don't rinse it quickly. He left without another word. The next morning, my mom took Sophie to the gym before it opened. Lisa walked her through deadlifts at 5 a.m. while the speakers whispered old R&B and the lights came up slow. After, my mom sat her on a bench and made her eat an egg sandwich and said, if anyone makes you feel small, you lift heavier. Sophie rolled her eyes again and tucked a wedge of egg into her mouth like she was trying not to smile there too. My paternal grandmother called that afternoon, voice steady in a way I've never heard from her. She asked if she could make Sunday dinner and if we would come. We said yes with the understanding that yes is not a promise, it's a test you take one question at a time. She made a casserole only people over 60 know how to make, crunchy bits on top, something creamy and not quite identifiable beneath. She set 2 extra places without announcing it like an apology. When Sophie walked in, Grandma's face did a thing I can't describe without sounding like a Hallmark card. She didn't reach for her or cry. She asked if she wanted sweet tea and if she had any allergies. Later, while we were clearing plates, my grandmother rested her palm on the edge of the sink and said to my mom, without theatrics, I am sorry I was not kind when I needed to be. My mom angled her chin toward the stack of bowls and said, hand me that, and it was somehow the most generous response I've seen anyone give. On the business side, the fallout arrived in envelopes and calendar invites. There's going to be a consent judgment against my dad's little consulting venture. He'll owe damages he cannot comfortably pay, and there will be a very official piece of paper saying he doesn't get to pretend he didn't do exactly what he did. Our attorney said a line I think I'll steal forever, you can't set fire to the bridge and then sue the river for getting you wet. My mom laughed for real at that one. Her boyfriend, still not in a hurry, fixed the busted hinge on our pantry door and then taught Sophie how to rewire an old lamp they found on the curb. He doesn't try to be anything other than a person who shows up with the right screwdriver. When my mom had to meet with the DA's office to answer questions about the old expense accounts routine, boring, still stressful, he parked downstairs and waited with 2 coffees and a crossword. He doesn't fill the room, he fits into it. Sophie got accepted into a summer program at the university downtown for girls in engineering. The tuition wasn't nothing. My mom slid the brochure across the counter and said, I'd like to sponsor you, if you'll let me, and when Sophie hesitated, my mom added, you'll be working at the front desk, remember? Consider this hat'd pay for dealing with men who pretend not to hear you. Sophie snorted, then nodded, then texted me an hour later a string of exclamation points that looked like fireworks. A week ago, when the first check from the seized consultancy account hit the escrow that will eventually flow back to my mom's company, we didn't go out to celebrate. We moved the couches and cleared a space on the living room floor, and Sophie brought over a beat-up drone kit she and her friend were trying to resurrect. Wires, tape, Too many tiny screws in a cereal bowl. It was chaos that made sense. The dog wore the gym hoodie again and tried to chase the drone when it finally lifted off, crooked and buzzing, and smacked into the ceiling with a noise that made all of us jump and then wheeze laugh like we'd just pulled off something illicit. My dad filed a motion to modify the TRO, citing hardship. The judge denied it in a paragraph that said a lot with very few words. He's floated the idea of mediation through his attorney twice since, like maybe there's another door we haven't already closed. We keep choosing the hallway with the exit sign that points away from him. On Sunday night, after everybody had gone home and the house had that quiet hum it only has when the dishwasher is doing the last of the work, my mom stood in the doorway and watched the drone battery charge. "I can't believe this is the life," she said, soft. Not shocked, just a person staring at their own kitchen like it had shifted a few inches to the right and settled into a truer place. I told her I could. She rolled her eyes at me in the exact way Sophie does, flipped the light off with her fist, and the battery blinked in the dark like a firefly that didn't care who was or wasn't watching. Update 6. The week announced itself with a doorbell at 7:14 am. And a guy in a windbreaker holding a stack of paper thick enough to hold a door open. Subpoena duces tecum, deposition notice, request for forensic imaging of all devices reasonably believed to contain proprietary materials. Addressed to my dad but delivered to our house because the state's corporate registry is still living in 2015. Our attorney took one look and said, calmly, "It's just a calendar invite with teeth," and told us to make coffee. The deposition was in a rented conference room with carpet that tried and failed to be beige. Court reporter unpacking a tiny mechanical forest, my mom in a navy blazer that makes people sit up straighter, me in the chair against the wall with a legal pad I didn't need. My dad came in with the posture of somebody pretending the chair is a throne. His lawyer warmed up his jaw for the objection to form reps like he was at the gym. Early on, our attorney put their shared screen up, 2 identical pitch decks, slide by slide, then an export log stamp the night my dad resigned. He said, soft as butter, that exporting contacts from the CRM was industry standard. Our attorney didn't smile with her eyes when she reminded him that industry standard isn't a defense to theft. The reporter typed. The air conditioner coughed. You could hear him realize he'd said it out loud. The forensic image came back with exactly the kind of arrogance you can Google. Burners weren't burns, they were Gmail accounts with the same 3 digits he always uses tacked to the end, logged in from the Starbucks a block from the coworking space and the Wi-Fi at the strip mall where his Pillate studio used to be. Same file hash, same slide 12 with a crooked alignment. Our attorney filed an emergency motion. The judge set a hearing for 2 p.m. My dad didn't show. The bailiff called his name to an empty hallway. A bench warrant isn't dramatic when it's printed in Times New Roman. The sheriff's office found him at 4:40 am sitting under a ficus in the lobby of a bank that closed at 5. He spent a night in county, not because anyone wanted him to, but because the machine grinds in exactly that way when you put your hand in it and leave it there. At 9 the next morning, his wife the secretary was on our doorstep with a banker's box and a face that looked like someone had finally taken a backpack off her shoulders. She didn't ask to come in, she handed me the box and said, "I'm done." Inside, a spiral notebook full of invoice numbers and dates, a cheap thumb drive labeled new logos that was actually the old drives with the timestamps intact, 2 printed emails like postcards that said the quiet part loud. We called our attorney and she took possession like it was nothing and everything at the same time. Later, the wife texted me a photo of a suitcase in the trunk of a car and a dog on the passenger seat and wrote, "I'm going to my sister's." No insults. No plea. Just a person exiting a building that had been on fire for a long time. The coworking space sent out a notice on Wednesday, delinquent tenants, contents to be auctioned to cover unpaid fees. It took us 10 minutes to recognize the unit number. We went on our lunch break wearing baseball caps, like we were trying to be the least interesting people in a parking lot. 20 minutes and $210 later, we owned a collection of half-charged dreams, 2 wobbly chairs, a monitor with a crack like a river delta, a whiteboard with our clan's first name circled in blue and the word hustle in a frame on the wall that made Lisa snore. There was also a lava lamp the color of mouthwash. We rolled the chairs into the truck for a women's shelter's co-working room and set the lava lamp on our jam's front desk because the universe loves stupid little trophy. Sophie named it non-compete and threatens to knit it a sweater. Thursday night at 8:03 at m. My grandmother called and said my grandfather was at the hospital. A small one, she said, the word stroke avoiding her brain like a hot stove. We drove over with a bag of lemon drops and a cardigan because hospitals are always the wrong temperature. My dad was already there, shoulders hunched like he was praying or reading a bill, and tried to direct the nurse like anyone in that room needed him to. My grandmother said not now without looking at him and led us to the bed where my grandfather was pale and irritated and somehow still himself. He saw my mom and made the awkward little wave people do when they don't know if they get to touch you. He said to me, "You brought the tall one?" And Sophie stepped around the curtain with a shy, determined set to her mouth like she rehearsed the moment and decided not to make a big speech. He squinted and said, "You have my mother's eyes," and then asked if she'd push the baseball game to Channel 4. It wasn't healing. It was a window cracked open a half-inch in a sticky room. The lemon drops turned his tongue green. He asked for another and complained about the coffee. Normality, like warm laundry, is heavier than it looks. On the way home, my dad called from an unknown number that was not unknown. He said he'd made a mistake and asked if we could talk like adults. I told him all the adults I know are in bed by 10 and hang up the first time. He tried again on Monday through his attorney with a draft apology letter that read like it had been assembled by a committee of robots. My mom uncapped a pen and drew one line through the paragraph offering joint press language like it was a smudge on a mirror. She sent it back with exactly one sentence at the top: "Please direct all future communication to counsel." Track changes off. No emojis. Sophie's summer program emailed acceptance with a subject line that didn't look important until it was. Full tuition, a stipend that made my mom laugh out loud and say finally, an institution that pays women to be brilliant, lap access at the university downtown, the whole thing. Her physics teacher wrote a recommendation that used the phrase native fluency with vectors and told us at pickup that she'd already started annoying the grad students, which is exactly what I hoped. We celebrated by eating terrible nachos on the back steps because the weather finally decided to be kind. The dog wore the gym hoodie and fell asleep on a shoe. Sophie tried to play it cool and failed completely, and it was perfect. My mom's boyfriend built a workbench in our garage from scrap wood and a kind of competence you can't Google. He brought a toolbox and a tomato plant, because he refuses to accept that hating tomatoes is a permanent identity and insists it's a challenge of preparation. He and Sophie spent an hour arguing about soil acidity like it was a podcast you could see. He measured twice and cut once. He taught her to use a miter saw with that gentle, strict patience he carries like a flashlight. She soldered a crooked line of wire on an old drone motor and whooped when it spun like a bug trying to leave the room. My mom watched them from the door in bare feet with her hair up and the look she gets now when the room is exactly the right size. The contempt hearing happened in a courtroom that always smells like metal. The judge read the forensic report and then said, in a tone that could sand wood, "You were told not to fish in a well that did not belong to you. You brought bait, a cooler, and an Instagram live." She hit him with sanctions that had numbers attached, plus an order that bars him from holding any position of trust at any company that touches ours for the foreseeable future. Our attorney leaned in and murmured, "Consent judgment next week. He'll sign. He can't afford not to." Outside, on the sidewalk where the city has painted a bike lane that everyone ignores, my mom exhaled so slow the second hand hit my cheek. She didn't smile. She looked like a person who had carried a couch up a flight of stairs and set it down without dropping it on her foot. Sunday dinner happened again. My grandmother made the casserole with the crunchy top and the unnameable center and put extra lemons in the tea like she was trying to rewrite something small and important. My grandfather asked Sophie about capacitance and she rolled her eyes and then launched into an explanation that made his eyebrows climb his forehead. He left. It made the room bigger. During dishes, my grandmother handed my mom a towel and said, "I meant it," and my mom nodded at the stack of plates and said, "I know," and it was enough. When the first wire hit the escrow from the frozen accounts tied to the fake consultancy, we didn't go out. We moved the coffee table again and rebuilt the drone we had already broken twice. The lava lamp burbled beside non-compete's little post-it warning about late fees. The dog chased shadows on the wall. The tomato plant sat in its new pot like it had a secret. A summer thunderstorm rolled in and blanked the power for a second, and Sophie rigged a battery pack to an lid strip with the smug triumph of a teenager who has already decided where she's going. The kitchen glowed a softer blue than any lamp we own. My mom leaned in the doorway and said, "Turn the stove off," and then, when the power came back, "Okay, turn it on," and it was the smallest, truest ceremony for a life that finally fits.